Welcome in, everyone, to Scoop du Jour. I'm Jourdan Black. I just got back from a trip to Florida. That is where I'm from. So, spending some much needed time with family and friends. And I'm capping off a fun filled July with family and friends visiting Chicago, with my parents then coming to Chicago. So, back to back weekends with family. And it'll feel like home here in Chicago with them visiting us in this place that has been home to us for about a year. But another place that feels like home to me and always has and always will is North Carolina. It's the place I went to college in Chapel Hill. I love every part of North Carolina, but something about the Triangle is such a special place to me. So UNC is the place where I got to go to school, but it's also the place where I made some amazing friends. And it's the place where I got to work for the football team and watch some incredible football games and basketball games, of course. But this week's guest, you will see and hear and hopefully enjoy as much as I did, is James Hurst. He is an offensive lineman currently for the New Orleans Saints. He began his career with the Baltimore Ravens and is entering his 10th season in the league, which even he said is hard to believe because it's just such a grind, right? But he works so hard. He is as kind as he is a hard worker. He is, when I tell you this, one of the nicest people you will ever hear from. And I've been lucky enough to meet. The way we got connected is his wonderful wife is a sorority sister of mine. So you'll hear all of these stories in this week's episode. But I really want you to pay attention to when I ask him who are some folks that he admires who have kind of guided his career. His answer is so special. He's also a coffee connoisseur, a book lover. So, not to mention an incredible athlete. He started all 16 games for the Saints last season. So, he's loving New Orleans. He was phenomenal on the Ravens as well. We talk a little bit of ACC, of course, with the UNC connection, but with also so many guys in the league. He is just such a treat. So, I hope you enjoy this episode with James Hurst. If you enjoy this episode or so many others on Scoop du Jour, don't be afraid to like, subscribe, rate, review, wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Tell your friends as well. And without further ado, here is this week's episode with James Hurst. Alrighty, welcome into Scoop du Jour, James Hurst, offensive lineman currently for the Saints, but you spent a lot of your career with the Baltimore Ravens and you're entering your 10th season in the NFL. I don't know if you can kind of believe that. It seems probably hard to believe for you, maybe not for everyone else. But how does that feel going into season number 10 and in a pretty cool franchise for you?
Yeah, it is surreal, absolutely surreal. It's been a huge blessing. Um, 10 years ago, when I left college, I never could have imagined playing 10 years in the NFL. So I feel very, very fortunate. I know there's a ton of things that, have to fall your way, and then there's, certain number of things that's on your plate as well. So I feel blessed to play 10 years. It's just been so enjoyable, and I think with each passing year, I've been able to enjoy it a little bit more. So I'm very grateful for that. And yeah, New Orleans is awesome. It's unbelievable. This will be my fourth season in New Orleans, and my wife Amanda and I, we love it there. We loved it from day one. Felt really respected and valued on the team, and then the city is such a cool place. We are foodies, so we are right at home in that aspect. But yeah, so much history, so much to do, and yeah, we've really been soaking it in for sure since we've been there.
Going back to when you left college, which I didn't touch on, a former Tar Heel, fellow Tar Heel, I
Go
should
Heels,
say.
go Heels.
Go Heels. I always throw that in when I have former Tar Heels on, but maybe my first former Tar Heel football player that we did have Coach Fedora on.
Yes.
And going back, so undrafted out of Carolina, and
Yep.
when you leave UNC and you're undrafted, but then you're 10 years in the league. Take me through maybe that brief moment before a team picks you up, and then now you're 10 years in. What goes through your mind when you're like, no one grabbed me, and now
Yeah.
but I mean, what goes through your mind right before you get snatched up by the Ravens? Maybe on what they missed, and then what they kind of grabbed in snatching you up.
Yeah, so I'm gonna go back just a year further. So my last season at Carolina, we were playing in the Belk Bowl in Charlotte and against Cincinnati, and I in that game I tied the school record for starts in football,
Yeah,
which is really awesome. And also in that game, I broke my leg in the first quarter. So the draft projections are what they are. There's
right.
definitely uncertainty around them, but I was projected to be drafted anywhere from the second round to the fifth round. Then I break my leg, and so then obviously everything's up in the air. So draft weekend for me was high anxiety, stress, ton of disappointment. Honestly, just you always have that goal and that vision of seeing your name on the bottom line on ESPN, like so and so draft
Mhm.
James Hurst, and that was a huge dream that I had and one that was not realized. But as the draft's ending, I think a lot of people probably don't know that in the sixth and seventh round of the drafts, teams are already calling their high value undrafted guys to try to get to sign them.
Mhm.
So even though they're still drafting players, they're also working on these other group of players that, people that were just outside the draft, is from a talent perspective, maybe. So in the sixth and seventh round, I'm getting phone calls from teams hoping they're going to say, we're going to draft you. But in reality, a lot of those teams were saying, hey, we might draft you, but we know we want to sign you if you don't get drafted. So yeah, that was a whirlwind for sure. But probably within 30 minutes after the draft, I'd signed with the Ravens. They had at the time, a great offensive line coach, Juan Castillo, who had been known for developing undrafted offensive linemen. So a very kind of specific niche reputation in that
Mm.
regard. But they brought me in, and the depth chart was favorable to be able to make the team. And so those are some of the reasons I picked Baltimore. And it really worked out. They gave me an opportunity to play as a rookie. I started 7 games, 2 playoff games, and played some really good football. And I think that really gave me, I don't know, maybe bought me some time to earn a spot on the team and earn a spot on the team for years to come until I signed a second contract with them. So it was a wild ride, and at the time it was not ideal. It's not how you draw it up, but it definitely ended up working out for me.
What's neat, and maybe I've heard this too with undrafted free agents, you almost get a little more say or pick, like, because
Yep.
you're kind of picking where you wanna go, and like you said, this coach has kind of your specific line of work is his forte. So,
Yeah.
you kind of feel like it's almost in your favor. Not
Yeah.
right? Like,
Oh yeah. Yeah. 100% right with that. Yeah.
okay, so you go to Baltimore, and not when you're drafted, but then later you get to protect who's one of the great NFL quarterbacks now, Lamar Jackson. Talk about
Yeah.
that experience, but even before, what it was like just to and a fellow ACC quarterback, just the experience of being on the O line there and what it was like for you and starting as a rookie, just all the experiences you had in Baltimore.
Yeah. My rookie year, the guy in front of me, had a couple different injury spells, and so I got to start and play. My first game was actually a start against the Carolina Panthers in
Oh,
Baltimore,
that's
which
cool.
was pretty ironic. Steve Smith was with us in Baltimore, and that was his first game against his old team, the Carolina Panthers.
Oh, that's
And
cool.
so I think he had, like, I don't know, 150 yards and 2 touchdowns or something. He had a day, which was really cool to see for him. We won 38-10. I mean, it was a pretty awesome first start. And then I go to Indianapolis the very next week, which is my hometown,
Yeah.
and
Did
give
you grow up
up
a
three.
Colts fan?
I did, yeah. So
Okay.
the Colts drafted Peyton Manning, I think in like '98, which I was 7 years old, so it was perfect timing for me. And they started to get really good as I was growing up. So I grew up a Colts fan. First start on the road in Indianapolis, and I gave up 3 sacks. Had a horrible game. It was
Oh.
definitely like a revert back to the mean, if you will.
Mhm.
So just kind of realized, how tough the league is, and how fast fortunes can change, I guess. Yeah, into my rookie year, started 2 playoff games. First playoff game was in Pittsburgh, in the Pittsburgh Baltimore rivalry. We won that game, and then went on to play at New England versus Tom Brady in the second round of the playoffs, and we lost that game. But it was an incredible experience as a rookie. And as years passed, I realized how rare playoff games are. My
Yeah.
first year I play in 2 playoff games, and I'm kind of under the impression like, oh yeah, this is normal. This is what happens, and it's not. And so I've really come to cherish those more as I've gotten older, and what they stood for. But yeah, played 3 more years there and signed a 4-year extension in Baltimore. I played left guard. I played right tackle. I played all over. That's kind of been the story of my career, is being able
Mhm.
to go into different places. So the versatility has, made me more valuable and helped me keep a job, which has been great. Um, yeah, loved Baltimore. That's my wife and I. We were married when I was playing in Baltimore, so just getting started on our marriage journey, and we had a great team chaplain, Johnny Shelton, who's still there, who had a big role in I say my early development as a football player and as a husband. So just a ton of growth there, learning from some older guys, Marshall Yanda, who just retired a few years ago, who I'm sure will be a Hall of Famer someday. He's an offensive lineman who is a big mentor for me, and Coach Harbaugh was a great coach. And like I mentioned before, I mean, the NFL is about timing and opportunity. You can only hope to get an opportunity to play, because there's a lot of people that want that job. There's a lot of people competing for it, and when you do, hopefully you've prepared and are ready to go and can play well in those situations. And that happened for me, and I'm always grateful for Baltimore for that opportunity of getting my career started.
Who else has been a mentor to you, whether it's an offensive lineman or a coach or just like someone who's kind of played a big role in your football career and otherwise?
My brother, who's still my best friend, I think he's a very I don't know, like, brutally honest person,
Mhm.
and he's been good for me as far as being a realist and like understanding my position, and understanding, I guess kind of the cold side of the business world of the NFL.
Mm,
So that's been good for me to kind of just balance out my kind of upbeat, optimistic attitude, I'd say usually. And then, the biggest person is Amanda. Biggest supporter, always there for me, and just looking out for me. And truly, we kind of make jokes at each other. Like, there's no telling what my career would or wouldn't be if we weren't married. And um, being able to support me during there's so much just stress and anxiety over performance, because it's all about, what have you done for me lately? So the
right.
ups and downs in that, and just being able to battle through adversity, and being able to, in a healthy way, celebrate the victories and small successes that I've had during my time.
Okay, so it's so sweet, but also telling that both of your mentors were family members. Like a lot of people would say a coach and a player, and even someone they've never met but they watched. So I want to touch on that. Your Let's start with Amanda because you've mentioned her so much,
Yeah,
and she is so wonderful because I know her too, and we were sorority
yeah,
sisters. And I remember, James, when you guys got engaged at UNC, we did a ceremony, if you will. I
yeah,
don't know if I'm allowed to say that. I hope I didn't just spill like a sorority secret, and get kicked out of alumni chapters.
yeah.
Anyways, okay, so tell us how you met and all that whole story. I know it, but for everyone who doesn't.
Yeah. So one of my good friends on the team, Carson Wooten, he was younger than I was. He was Amanda's class, and he was a mutual friend. I guess he had the foresight that we might be a good match. So he kind of alerted me that, hey, I think I want to introduce you to this girl. I think you might be interested. But then to Amanda, he did not let her in on any of that. So as far as she knew, he was just hanging out, with one of his buddies, and everyone just kind of ended up in the same place. But he introduced us, and we really hit it off fast. She ended up discipling me in college and helping me get set up with one of my best friends now. His name is Grant Miller. Getting me, helping me mature in my faith and grow into my faith, which I'm eternally grateful for, honestly. So that's a huge part of my story. But yeah, it was love at first sight is probably cliche, but we really hit it off fast. I think both of us feel really strongly about the importance of our family, and the role they've played in our lives. And I think that was early on. That was probably a big point for us in our relationship. And yeah, so we dated. I was technically a junior. I told her I was a sophomore, which there was some truth behind that. I
Were
came
you a
into college a
sophomore on the
semester early.
roster?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. So the football eligibility and then the classroom, I was two different years, but the sophomore sounded closer to her freshman. So I led in with that, and it must have gave me a good enough opportunity to get my foot in the door.
When did you tell her that how old you really were?
So she asked me how old I was initially, and I said I was a sophomore, which was true on the football field.
Right.
But because I had that extra semester of classes before I started playing football there, I was a junior academically.
Mm.
So I don't know how it came up one day. Honestly, someone probably threw me under the bus and kind of revealed that to her, and then she had to, work through that on her own.
And I mean, you're only a couple of years apart anyways, right?
Yeah, yeah, 2 years apart, so it was no big deal.
Okay, and then so you propose while you're still in college, right?
So she was still in college. So it was her senior year, and it was is it her junior year, and it was my rookie year in the NFL. My
Oh.
bye week was in November, and so I drove because the drive from Baltimore to Chapel Hill was maybe 5 hours. So during my bye week, I drove back, proposed to her at a place on campus where we used to hang out, and I first told her I loved her, and so we drove up. We walk up this hill. It was on top of a hill, and I kind of, reminisce with her about, yeah, do you remember we used to come here all the time? And so we get to the top of the hill. We're both dressed up. I told her we were going to a nice dinner. So I'm sure she's suspecting that I'm going to propose. And so we get to the top of the hill. We reminisce. Well, we start walking back down. My hope was that she would be like, oh, maybe I was wrong. Um, maybe this wasn't going to happen tonight. And then about halfway down the hill, I said, do you remember what happened here? Um, and then she said, she was kind of confused and said no. And then I proposed about halfway down the hill. So
Oh.
yeah, so that was great. That was her junior year. And then we were engaged for, felt like forever, for like 18 months. And so we got married in April of 2016.
Just because you had to wait for the off season.
Yeah, so we got engaged in November. My brother was getting married the following summer. We couldn't get married before in that spring because that wouldn't have been enough time to plan. And then football season, and then we wanted to wait till it warmed up a little bit, and so we picked April. So yeah, logistically, it's kind of how it worked out, and felt like forever at the time, but now it feels like, yeah, so long ago that it's hard to remember that.
And so now it's been 7 years? Almost
7
7?
years. Yeah, we
Wow,
just celebrated 7. Yeah,
amazing, and she is wonderful for
yeah.
everyone
Thank
who
you,
doesn't have the joy of
thank
knowing
you.
her.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and then so you also mentioned your brother who went to Carolina, and so was he the catalyst for you to go to UNC? And talk maybe a little bit about your recruiting to Chapel Hill.
Yeah. So my brother was 2 years older than me, and out of high school, he went to Mississippi State. Started some games. He was a tight end. He started some games as a freshman in the SEC, which is really awesome.
Yeah.
And then after his freshman year, all the coaches there got fired, and he was more of a blocking tight end, and they were switching to a full spread system, which kind of comes full circle later. Which didn't suit him as well. So he decided to transfer at the same time that I was in the middle of the recruiting
Mm,
situation. And so, I really liked UNC. UNC told him that they would love to have him as well. So it kind of worked out that we went at the same
cool.
time. He got there a semester before me, and then had to redshirt back then when you transferred,
Right. Mm.
you had to redshirt a year or sit out a year. So yeah, we ended up playing a season, and then his senior year, he kind of re-injured his back, and that was the end of his football career, which was definitely unfortunate. But at the time, it was unbelievable to be able to play together, and I mean to be able to play right next to each other, tackle and tight end, was really really awesome. A lot of great memories from that.
That's so cool. Yeah, I'm reminiscing back in the day of like sitting out. Like, I mean, who remembers that? No NIL. But
Yeah,
when you started at Carolina, you were recruited by Butch Davis and his staff, and then you went
that's
through a
correct. Yep.
coaching change. I mean, it's also a metaphor for just all the change that you go through in the NFL, switching teams. But what is it like from a player perspective to go through coaching changes and just kind of you switch systems, but you switch staffs and guys that you're close with, and inevitably people are going to transfer. What is that like as a player?
I think it's really tough. I think depending on the change, it can definitely have some benefits, for each individual person in certain ways. But I think it's really tough. And I think you probably don't realize how tough it is when you're, 19, 20 years old and having to go through a coaching change. Learning a new system is one thing, but everyone on the team has to do that. It's not, it's a hurdle of a new system and new coaches, something you have to do. I do think the toughest part, especially in college, is the changing of the strength coaches. So I
Mm,
had three strength coaches in college, and they were all really great, and this is no indictment on them or their performance as coaches. But when you get a new strength coach, inevitably they have a new system of lifting as well. And so a lot of times you have to learn certain ways to lift weights or to work out or to run. They emphasize different things. And so there's this kind of period when you get a new strength coach of learning their ways, learning how they do it, how they lift, and what they stress. And that time you're kind of losing in a sense of like really intense training because you have to learn. And so that was really tough for me. And that was one thing that I think I realized my first 2 years in the NFL. When you can have a consistent strength program, you're able to kind of advance that program on a path that, just allows kind of exponential gains. But when you have to keep starting back over, it really slows that progress. And in college, when you're kind of at the peak of your physical, growing stage of life, it was a tough obstacle to overcome.
was that one of the hardest things in your transition to the NFL, like just gaining or just becoming the weight or the size that it's different in the NFL? Like if you're an offensive lineman, no matter what, whatever position,
Yeah.
like just NFL size, was that something really hard or an obstacle, if you will?
So that was definitely an obstacle, but I don't think the biggest obstacle.
Mm,
I tell people a lot that the transition from high school to college is mostly a physical transition
okay.
because when a guy's been in college for 2 or 3 years, he's been 2 or 3 years of a college weightlifting program. And, in high school, most of the time, you just don't have that available to you or the time to be able to work out in a college strength and conditioning program. Um, but for the transition from college to the NFL is more technical because by the time you've got, if you will, the cream of the crop of those college players, all of those guys are big and fast and strong. Everyone, because you
Yeah.
have to be in order to be that level of talent. And so now the biggest transition is technical, like my technique, how I punch somebody or how I use my hands or my footwork or, the timing of certain things or understanding the game. It's the small details I think in the NFL that separate guys that stay around from the guys that, maybe have a shorter career.
Interesting. Okay, so
Yeah,
who is
yeah.
the hardest, toughest, strongest, and this can be all the same
Mm.
answer or different, um, but like the just hardest defensive lineman to go up against in the NFL that you have?
Well, I will say I do think that the best defensive, I mean, maybe probably the best player in the NFL right now is Aaron Donald. Only had to go against him a few times. Played against him in college, but he plays defensive tackle. I play offensive tackle, so we don't see each other kind
Yeah.
of in a one-on-one situation very often at all. But man, he's a big time game changer. But as far as people that I've personally gone against, man, there's some really good ones. Um, I think of Von Miller. I played
Mm,
him maybe my maybe in my fifth season. Um, yeah, his get off on the snap is unbelievably quick. It's I'd say probably second to none. And then his ability to bend around the corner, his athletic traits of being able to bend and dip around a corner are just so unique. And then on top of it, at this point, I mean, I don't even know what year he's in, maybe 12 or something like that. But he obviously understands the game, as well as someone can understand it. So, as the mental side of the game as well, he's top notch. So he's kind of a complete package. This past season, we played the Browns. And so before that game, I was studying Myles Garrett,
yeah.
and that film was terrifying. So we ended up playing them in Cleveland. and it was negative 26 degrees on Christmas Eve.
No.
The field was ice, muddy, icy. It was a horrible situation to play a game. But I was grateful that I didn't have to go against him in a regular situation, because he, in my opinion, this year, he was probably the best defensive lineman that I watched or studied on film. He was really unbelievable.
Yeah.
He's able to beat guys with speed, strength, power, counter moves, just kind of any way he was able to win. So, yeah, he's a really great player as well.
What are you doing in a game like that to mentally and physically prepare? Like, what are you wearing? What are you eating? How are you staying? Like, how are you doing that?
Yeah, so basically, when you're on the field, that's as bad as it gets. The wind is able to circle in the middle of the field,
Yeah.
but when you go back to the sidelines, I mean,
They've
I
got
don't want
you.
to say it's cush, but you've got heated benches, you've
Yeah.
got coats, you've got like
That
hand
big
warmers,
rack thing.
all those things, toboggan, uh, like space heaters blowing on you. So it's fine. It's really just the
Good.
exposed skin when you're out on the field is like it's pure misery.
Do you keep your
Um,
arms out?
so I wore sleeves, which,
Okay.
the old heads in the NFL world would probably be, rolling over, thinking about that. An offensive lineman wearing sleeves, very frowned upon. But it got to a point where I don't know who it was. Some government health organization said that we should avoid being outside for any more than 5 minutes at a time. And we were about to be outside for 3 hours. So
Right.
I decided for my own health, it'd probably be best if we just put the sleeves on and
Yeah.
made it work for the day. Yeah.
That is so wild. Um, so okay, you're talking about like guys who've been in the league for 12 years. Like you're going on 10. I mean, you're not far off. How has your speaking of mental, how has your mental game and physical game evolved in that long?
Yeah. I'll start with the mental game, or excuse me, I'll start with the physical game. So I think just as I've gotten older, obviously there's certain, maybe injuries or weaknesses that you might have, and you understand those better, but you also understand how to work them and train them and make them into
Mhm.
non-weaknesses. So I think that understanding on the physical side of things is the biggest change because everyone's lifting and everyone's getting big and strong and fast. But I think as far as keeping yourself healthy, it's understanding what your body needs. Understanding how to keep your knees strong or your back strong. Just two examples that that's going to allow you to play in the game because the most important thing is that you're healthy enough to play in the game on Sundays. And so that's the first thing, and then the mental aspect of the game I think has been really fascinating because as I've had more coaches, um, each I'll say offensive line coach, they kind of teach differently, or they might
Right.
have different things that they value or different techniques that they use. So being with different people, I've been able to learn a lot of different techniques, a lot of different ways to watch film, to study an opponent. Particularly Coach Doug Marrone, who is a head coach for the
Mhm.
Jaguars and the Bills, I believe.
Yeah.
He's our offensive line coach now in New Orleans, and he definitely opened my eyes in year 9 on some different ways to watch film, different ways to study opponents, kind of chart tendencies a lot of times, and that has really helped a ton. And just preparing for an opponent, understanding who you're going against and what you might get on certain down and distances or situations within the game. So it's always a learning process, and I think as soon as you start refusing to learn, that's probably going to be the death of your career, unless physically you're just an elite level prospect.
Tell me the coolest stadium to you, like where you like playing.
This is a wild card,
Oh,
but I say Minnesota, which we
okay.
play there this year, which is pretty exciting. Um, the outside of the stadium is black and it's like kind of abstract, a little futuristic looking. But then on the inside, one of their end zones has this window that's probably it's a rectangle and it seems like it's 50 yards long. It's this huge window that they kind of swing open sideways for the game. So it's a really different feel like when you're
Okay.
in it's an indoor stadium. So when you're
Yeah.
inside, but one of the end zones feels like it's halfway open. It's pretty cool. And then on top of the fan experience there, um, it's just their chants are cool. Everyone's in on it. It's a really awesome experience, and I try not to rate Baltimore, New Orleans because I'm on the
Yeah.
good team, right? Like
Right.
people are cheering for us, so yeah, I enjoy those a lot as well. And those have been really cool. It was cool to play in New Orleans as a Raven, and then
Mhm.
now come to New Orleans and be able to actually enjoy the fan experience. But yeah, those have been all great. And Minnesota, I say Minnesota, I think because it's different, and it's not like Pittsburgh is a really historic stadium or Green Bay is a really historic stadium, and those have all been awesome and kind of dreams come true, if you will, to play in them. But Minnesota is one that totally caught me off guard. Had no idea what I was, getting into when we played there for the first time. So it's pretty cool for me.
You had a really good memory of, like, your first game, the score, your second game, not so great. And I'm curious if you have a favorite memory from the NFL of, like, a game that sticks out to you.
Whew, that's a tough question. As far as the game that sticks out to me, I definitely think my rookie year, that first playoff game that I started playing in that Steelers Ravens rivalry. I mean, it was
Yeah.
as hot, as yeah, just the stadiums had all the energy. The rivalry was there. As a playoff game. It was win or go home. We were on the road. I was playing James Harrison. It was just, it had all the pieces of a memorable game. And then, I played decently well, and we won the game. So my first playoff start was a win. So that was definitely one of them. My wife actually got that jersey framed, which is just a really,
Oh,
really cool memory for me to have and to look back on. But there's so many, but that's definitely the first one for me that comes to mind.
okay, what about a college game? Best or favorite college game?
Well, I mean, I think you probably could guess that
I think
my
I'm gonna
favorite
guess
college
it.
game
What's my
was
favorite? Oh, the
well,
Geo.
the Geo run
Yeah.
back. Yeah, I
Ta
mean, it's
take us through it from your point of view.
yeah. So, um, a little backstory in that game, I was playing horrible. I mean, I was having a bad day. They had some good players on the D line, but it was not my day. So I was super frustrated. We go to the end. I think we were down maybe when they punted that ball. But everyone on the sideline was like, "All right, guys, like 2 minute drill. Like we're gonna have to throw the ball a lot. We're gonna have to throw it deep. Like we're gonna have to send up a prayer basically because we don't have any time left. We got to score points." And so we were all very much like, "All right, like here we go. Like let's go. We gotta put the drive together. We gotta score points." And just the total disbelief of one that they punted him the ball. Like everyone was like,
No.
"Yeah, they're just gonna kick it out of bounds, right? And we're gonna get the ball on the minus 30-yard line and have to go a long way." One, so he catches the ball, so we're all kind of like, "Oh, well, that's nice. He'll
Right.
probably at least
Thank
get some
you.
yards." Yeah, and then he keeps running, and it's like there are two guys out in front of him blocking for him that they laid some blocks and then met him in the end zone, and it was just like, man, it was the best experience. That was the loudest I've ever heard that stadium, as a player or as a fan. So it was unbelievable. Just truly a memory, and one that I'll never forget.
And the helmets, I can
Oh
just see
yeah,
it,
yeah,
picture, and I actually even wasn't, I think because it's the Thanksgiving game, I don't even think I was there, but I just, like, have such a vivid memory of that
yes,
one.
yeah. I can hear. Was it Jones that was calling the
Oh,
game?
Jones Angel, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So I can hear his voice, like
Yes.
making that call, and yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, it's so good. That's, like,
Yeah,
definitely a top sports moment. So, actually now, I'm sure you see a lot of Carolina guys when you're traveling, but you've played with some ACC guys. They're, different, who knows what the divisions are gonna look like with all of this restructuring, but
yeah.
you've got Lamar, you've got Jameis. What does the ACC smack talk look like? Are you telling them that Carolina's the best ACC school or what?
I lay low.
Yeah, I know, you're too nice.
Yeah, speaking of Jameis, yeah, he's great. I love Jameis, and he's the opposite of that, as you probably could imagine.
Like,
And so
it doesn't
he's
surprise me. Yeah.
yeah, so they could be FCS team, and he's going to be in the building acting like they're about to go to the national championship. So I love it. Honestly, it's great banter. I think that the SEC guys in particular, they dog in the ACC, and they have the national championships, which is fair. I can't argue against that.
Tell them about
So
our
we
field
kind of,
hockey program.
I know. I'm trying to tell them. I'm trying to tell
Basketball,
them.
baby. We've got basketball.
Yes, yeah. So I think from an ACC's perspective, um, it feels good because it feels like, while we might not have played at the same school, we're kind of on the same team, which is
Hmm.
nice. It feels like there's a lot of pride in the ACC, and I think people that played at ACC schools understand that. Well, yes, football is what we do, and it, in our minds, is the most important sport, and I think a lot of people would agree with that. The ACC is just so well rounded and plays a lot of sports really, really well. So as a fan, it's great for me because I get to enjoy our success in baseball and basketball and in other sports, and watch that and cheer our guys on. So
What's something that people don't know about being a professional athlete, and for you specifically, obviously in the NFL, that you wish people knew? Maybe something hard or something interesting or just something unique, that you have insight into.
yeah, I think it's probably the off season time. Um,
Yeah, tell us
the
like
off,
what you're doing right now and
yeah,
kind of the
yeah.
back and forth.
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate this because the off season is very nice, and you can set your own schedule, and you can take vacations, and you can do a lot of really fun things. So, I want to say that first before I say this, but I think sometimes people might think that we play in the season for 6 months, and then you're off for 6 months, and it's definitely not that at all. I think the end of the season for me, I take a little time to get healthy, give myself a mental break from, training, weightlifting, football, all those things to kind of just reset in January, and then when February and March starts rolling around, the weightlifting, the running, the training picks right back up, and it's for me, it's usually 5 days a week. I lift 4 days a week, and that's about I lift for about 3 hours, which is a really long time to lift weights, but it's what
Yeah.
works for me and what I've learned over these 9 seasons that I need to do to be able to play. And then, as we get closer to the regular season, my running picks up, my drill work picks up. But through all that time, it's nutrition, it's sleep, it's recovering through stretching, massage work, stuff on your own, stuff at clinics, physical therapy. At this point, I feel like I got some nagging things that have stayed with me in my career. So it's knowing those things and spending time to address them and make sure that they don't become an issue. So yeah, 5 days out of the week, I'm working 4 to 5 hours a day, and it's really all in my body because as an NFL player, our body's our business. As soon as our body, doesn't work, then it's going to be time to find a new job. So I've been blessed with some great people around me, physical therapists, strength coaches that have helped me and worked with me to keep my body in the right place and still being able to make gains as a 31-year-old NFL player and get better each year. I felt like I actually had my best season in year 9 last year, which was really, really cool to say, and really enjoyed that. So just making sure that I take the best things from each off season and try to incorporate those as best I can into the off season after that, just to make sure that you're optimizing your time and you're being efficient with your training and your energy and your focus.
You mentioned whenever the time comes what the next business is, and hopefully you have a while for that. But I read that after football, maybe coffee is in your future. And you're a
Yeah, yeah,
self-pronounced coffee connoisseur. So what is
yeah.
your coffee order, first of all?
Um, that's a tough question. So I order coffee on the temperature outside. So I like
Absolutely.
ice, I like hot, but I always do opposite. So if it's hot outside, I want something iced. If it's cold
Absolutely.
outside, I want something warm, which is I think that's probably pretty standard.
Yeah.
Um, so cold drink is an iced vanilla latte for sure.
Nice.
For me, that is my go-to. And then a hot drink is a cortado, which is kind of funny because I'm a really big guy. Cortado is 4 ounces. Yeah,
It
it's two
probably looks
ounces
like a
of
little
espresso. Yeah, and it's like I'm holding a little cup and sipping
uh,
my cup. But I love it. It's doesn't have as much milk, so I can taste the espresso, but also it's not quite as strong as just plain espresso. So I feel like it's a good middle ground for me, and I can drink it fast as I'm going to fill me up or give me a ton of calories that I don't need. So yeah, those are usually my go-to orders.
So do you and Amanda spend time trying all different coffee shops and like getting ideas for what yours will be one day? Like, what do you guys like to do when you do have time off during the season and in the off season?
Yeah, so definitely love going to coffee shops, and really kind of talking to the baristas or the owners of the shop, whoever's in there. That's probably what I love most about coffee is the community that it can often create. So for my shop, if that does come to fruition, I love big comfy furniture. I love seeing people catching up or visiting with each other, over a coffee drink. That's To me, that's the most important aspect of coffee. And yes, the coffee tastes great, and that's always what you want when you're paying for something, to be happy with that. But I think it's the community and it's talking with people and establishing relationships or continuing relationships, I think is really awesome. I think it's something that I don't want to say is unique to the coffee industry, but I think it's definitely something that could be taken advantage of, and just seeing friends catch up is a really cool thing, and so whatever you can do to encourage that is what I like to imagine. But we've been all over. We travel a good bit, and we're always checking out new shops and seeing what they have to offer, and getting ideas from here and there, and just kind of putting them in the back of our mind for one day if
Mhm.
that's something that takes place. Hopefully, we can have a really cool setup.
Yeah, that's awesome. And when you guys travel, I was following Amanda last travel time. You guys don't have that great of luck travel wise.
Oh
I mean,
no,
we got to get something better on that. Is it
I
canceled
know.
flights or what happens every time you travel?
So I think in February we had two different trips. So that's four flights, and three of those four flights were canceled
Oh my
because of
gosh.
one plane got rerouted. We got stuck in Dallas for the ice storm that hit Dallas. I mean, it was just miserable. It was a miserable stretch. I think by the end of it, by the fourth flight, we were just like kind of laughing at
Yeah.
how ridiculous the situation was, and we rented a car. We ended up driving like 6 hours to where we were trying to go because we were just like, hey, at least we feel like we can control the car.
Right.
So it was pretty miserable there for a bit, but we made the most of it, and ended with some good friends and some good just relaxing time, not being in an airport. So we
No.
made the most of it. But man, we were on a stretch there of yeah, you do not want to be traveling with us. That's for
No.
sure.
No, probably not. But no,
No.
Amanda's so funny because she makes them such light of it, and you guys are both so optimistic and
Yeah.
again, like a testament to you. You have friends and family and so many places because you're
Yeah.
good people. But before I let you go, you're a big reader. And I know you haven't been posting it lately, but you post like your books that you're reading and book reviews. And a
Yeah.
lot of them I like and have read because it looks like we have similar interest in like thrillers. So do you have
Yeah.
any book recommendations, books you read lately? What are you
Oh
into?
man. Let me pull up Goodreads. I use
Oh,
Goodreads.
me too.
I,
Okay.
it's a great app, but I don't want to miss something. I just read a book maybe like a year ago called The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I think
That one's
that's who
good.
wrote it, Lucy Foley. Let me see. Yeah, that one's really good. It's a good thriller. It's an easy read. It's probably like 250 pages, but it's one where each chapter ends with a cliffhanger, and you're like, I just got to keep going. I got to
Yeah.
keep reading. Man, this is good.
Put you on the spot there.
I read, I know, I read a book. I think it was called Artemis. It was by the guy that wrote The Martian.
I've seen that
That
book.
was,
I know the cover.
yeah,
Yeah.
that was a really good book. I like sci-fi, so
Okay.
sci-fi thriller are two that I usually go to. Just read a book called Dark Matter. Just finished that a couple days ago. That was really good. Kind of again, a sci-fi thriller with kind of a multiverse sort of twist, if you will.
Okay.
But I generally go for thrillers, the page turners.
Yes, me too.
Most of the time, I'm not like the self help. I'm not really getting a lot out of my books. Books are an escape for me.
Same.
And some people won't agree with that, but that's how I like to do it. I think it's a ton of fun that way. So
Well, you could do like a book club, coffee shop, mix it all. And
yep.
are you guys still? You were leading Bible study in Baltimore. Are you doing that in the state in New Orleans as well?
Yeah, so we have a chaplain in New Orleans, and my first 2 years in New Orleans, my first year was 2020, which was the COVID
Crazy.
season, and then 2021, which was still affected in a lot of ways. So the ministry on the team looked very different in those 2 years because we couldn't have real personal contact, which was difficult for us and difficult for the entire world during that time. But yeah, this past season we had another couple study. Amanda and I didn't lead it, but we were participants, and the team chaplain did a great job. Him and his wife, and then his brother and his wife as well, who's a teacher at the New Orleans Seminary there. They helped run that, and yeah, had a ton of attendance. So that's been something that's super encouraging for us, and it lets us get to know people on a much deeper level, much faster. So while we only spend 6 months in New Orleans at a time, we feel like we're getting years worth of just going deep with people and trying to understand them on a deeper spiritual level, and what they have success with and what they struggle with. So it's a really cool experience. I've been grateful to have chaplains on both teams that I've been on, just as a great resource for guys exploring their faith, and for people to grow in their faith, in the midst of a football season that can be really tough mentally and emotionally throughout the year, for kind of some support in that area as well.
That's awesome. Okay, last
Yeah.
question. What game are you most looking forward to this season?
Oh man, what game? Well, let's see. Oakland Titans, Panthers. We play 2 Thursday night games this year, which I
Yeah.
think, yeah, they just approved that teams can play 2 Thursday night games, which
You
those
want
are
to
a
talk about
bear.
that or no? A different conversation.
The
I'm just
those are definitely going to be a bear.
Yeah.
Our coaches do a really good job of making sure that everyone's rested and as healthy as you can possibly be. But obviously, as many people have said, it's not the most ideal situation for the players. But I'd say week 2 we play a Monday night game against the Panthers in Charlotte. So
Family comes.
yeah, a lot of family and friends come. North Carolina to me now feels like home. So it feels like the enemy coming into home territory, and that's a huge divisional game for us early in the season. So I'm sure that'll be a great environment and a ton of fun. And obviously, when the stakes are high, the games are a lot more fun. So that's going to be a big one for us.
That's awesome. James, this has been such a great conversation. We're so excited to cheer you on. I always cheer for my fellow Tar Heels. So year 10, before we let you go, plug yourself where can everyone find you? Obviously, whenever the Saints play, but anything else that you want to plug?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate you having me. This was a lot of fun. I love just kind of getting a little more out about myself. I'm an offensive lineman. We always fly under the radar. We don't get a lot of attention unless it's negative. So really appreciate you having me. Good catching up with you, and yeah, looking forward to watching this.
Awesome. Well, we'll be so excited. And can anyone follow you anywhere? Or you kind of do
Yeah,
it
I'm on
personally?
Instagram. I'm not on Twitter. James
Probably a
underscore
good thing.
W underscore Hurst. Yeah, Twitter's tough, especially in my world. You start typing some names in, and it can get real dirty real fast with the fan experience. So I got rid of that my second year in the NFL, and my life has been much better for it. So I'm just on Instagram, but I'm a casual follow. I'm an easy person to watch. So
I love it. And I interrupted you. Is it James underscore W underscore Hurst?
yes, that's correct. Yep.
Perfect. James, thank you so much. Say hi to Amanda, and
Yes, I will.
we'll watch you on TV. How's that?
That sounds great. Thanks so
All
much.
right. Thanks, James.